Welcome back to the Property Management Show, where we deep dive into the world of property management, marketing, and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Marie Tupman from 4.5 Marketing Agency, fresh out of maternity leave. 4.5 is focused on helping property managers get more owner leads through marketing. Whether you need help with your website, SEO, online reputation management, content, whether that be video, written content, blogs, also paid advertising, you name it, we can help you. Visit our website, 4andhalf.com to learn more. That's FOURANDHALF.com. In part one of our interview, we talked about why the vendor bidding process is broken and the importance of having a rock-solid scope of work and request for proposal for property management. Now, we kind of ended that on a cliffhanger for part one, where RoDevia was starting to talk about fraud. Now, in this episode, we're going to continue the discussion where we left off. We'll hash out how bidding fraud happens and what the implications are for a property management business. We will also cover bid analysis as well as what future trends to watch out for. So, without further ado, here is the rest of the interview. Enjoy.
They also can create transparency, and what we've done is that we've made it fraud detection also. So what do I mean by that? So when I was talking with my partner, when we first got this started, she was talking about how folks would, inflate the pricing, right? Or there would be work that needed to be done, but didn't really need to be done that particular way. And so there's been a few cases which we were able to detect, and there's two. The first case was that, and for property management companies and property owners that are listening to this could be happening to you and you don't know it. So there's cases where on-site staff may claim that work is necessary, billing the management or property owners for work that may not have been completed or even required, especially if your asset manager is new or you don't have staff on site, or your property owner is in Arizona and he's got properties in Tennessee, or your director is extremely is stressed thin. She's got 76 properties. She doesn't know that 34 doors need to be replaced, and they're not just any door. They're like electronic doors for senior citizens to not escape from an Alzheimer's unit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's number one. The second one is a conflict of interest and self-dealing. So in some cases, on-site staff or property managers may contract companies they own.
Oh.
Right. To perform work across multiple properties. For example, true story, a cleaning company was awarded a contract for $15,000 per month at one property. Right. It was like 150 doors. Got to have a cleaning crew, San Francisco. Right. And it was an on-site staff that had an EIN, registered with Compliance Depot or Nexus, had family members working in the company. And then they were able to cross over from that one property across the entire portfolio. Because
it was basically not a real bidding process. They just...
No, because you have your asset, you have your on-site staff. They say, go out and get the bids.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go get the bids for you.
They're too busy to check and verify.
Too busy to... Are they in Compliance Depot or are they in the vendor management? Yes. Okay, cool. Well, we can't get any other bids, or the bids are going to expire. So we're going to go with this one bid. And then over a 3-year period, they were able to extend similar contracts across the entire portfolio with a total of almost $500,000 without the owner's knowledge, paying it back to the employee. It's EIN.
Oh, man.
Right? So that fraud detection. So if you have a third party that doesn't have a dog in the fight, that can source the bids for you in a timely fashion and has comparables for you and or is able to, post. What we do is that we post our bids online redacted So therefore, you have other vendors that are able to compare online
And it's
too.
full
And
transparency.
it's full transparency outside of the licensing number, the company, the owners of the cleaning company or the roofing company. So, yeah, I'm excited about this. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so you talked about, some issues, very alarming issues that can crop up when, you know, the company itself is just assigning someone to source bids and they're not qualified to, or there's conflict of interest. And so, you also talked about kind of like the cons of not having like a scope of work. Now let's say, okay, now the property manager somehow managed to get some bids, right? Now it's time to analyze and compare the bids. Now, what challenges would a property management company face? What issues would crop up at that point in time?
Yeah. So, do you even have enough bids to compare to? That's the first thing. And then when you do, have the bids expired, right? To the point where they're no longer viable. One of the main things that I've really noticed about bids is, what does the vendor not offer? So, for instance, hazmat fentanyl situation at a property, dealing dope out of the apartment, had to close it down, cops came. Now you got to get it clean, right? So you got 4 bids for that. But what is it that the vendors don't offer? You need to analyze that particular piece. And what all 5 vendors did not offer was post drug testing, right? So if after it's clean, can you post it? Repairs or renovations beyond the cleaning itself. Maybe you had to tear into a wall because there was stuffing the drugs in the wall, right? And
Yeah.
then maybe asbestos or lead testing. Once you open up the wall, come to find out there's asbestos and lead testing. So now you got to get those. So now do we consider getting that particular aspect done too? So do you know what it is that you need beyond the bids themselves?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the most challenging part. And then I would also have to say how many hands are in the pot. Because if you have a board like HOA,
Oh, okay. Ooh.
so I have a client now who is HOA. Their main uh, issue is that even though they've gotten 3 bids, they want more. So I'm coming in to rectify that. So we've got your 3, plus we have 4 more. Now your top 3 is probably your top 4 is probably your top 4, and then you have your lower 3, because that should be the cadence. So basically, how do who's making the decision? Are you able to get in touch with the right people to make decision? Because who's ever receiving the bids probably isn't the person that can sign off on the bids themselves.
Yeah.
Um,
And if
and
it's
then
a board, you need to,
Mhm.
all agree. At least majority have to agree.
Yes. So we're working on that. We're working with them on that.
Uh-huh.
But as far as property, on-site staff, it's knowing what they're looking at, for instance, and then what the next move is, which would be, so you have a small swing in price for a roofing bid. This is one of the ones that we worked on in Stockton. They have 7 roofs, had 4 allegedly replaced, one of the other 3 replaced. Got the bids. Come to find out, only 3 of the roofs had originally been replaced
Oh
from
my
the original
goodness.
vendor because of the request for proposal that we had created and sent out to the vendors. All the vendors went up and they all had the same consensus, not knowing who they are, not knowing the other vendors, that this 4th roof was not, replaced, has not been worked on. So now it's, do we have a lawsuit with the previous vendor? And how do we prove this? Will you prove it with the bids that was supplied to you?
Multiple roofers confirm
Multiple
this roof
roofers,
has not been worked on.
correct.
Yeah.
So now what do you do? Do you pay for the other 3 roofs? You're asking what are the challenges? I could list
Yeah.
1,000. So yes, there's many facets. what you want is someone that's going to strive to get you in line to make the next decision.
Mm-hmm.
Give you the options and help you narrow them down to make educated decisions so that you can rest at night and get your needs met.
Yeah, and like you were saying, right, the importance of comparing apples to apples. Like when my husband and I were trying to source vendors to, figure out the mold situation at our home, we didn't know where to start. My husband just went on Yelp and did the thing where it's like, do you want to contact businesses for this? And then we were like inundated with so many vendors trying to, they just want to schedule stuff. And we're like, we don't even know what we need. We don't know what we want to do. And then, yeah, it was like very confusing. Like, how do we move forward? It's like we thought like, okay, we got 3 people here. And then but more people kept wanting to schedule appointments like weeks later. We're like, do we entertain them? Do we reset the whole search? And then, it's like when the bids came, they were all over the place. And so we didn't know what to make of it. One roofer said, you need a completely new roof.
Re-roof, yeah.
A re-roof, everything. And then another vendor was like, yeah, your roof's still good. We just need to replace a small section of roof, and then reseal your skylight. And the third vendor was just like, I'm not even going to bother giving you a quote because I don't see an issue. I think it's a condensation problem from inside the house. And so I was like, I don't know who to believe, right? And so with your help, we were able to get quotes that are apples for apples. But still, the making a decision on which vendor to award the project to, right? Even after you have the apples for apples comparison, like in your experience, who should bear the brunt of making that decision? Is it all on the property owner? Like, does a property manager just pass off all the information? Like, hey, here's the apples to apples comparison. You make the decision. Or as a property manager, should they make a recommendation? Like, we would like to award this to vendor A, and then basically just inform the owner? How do you see this playing out in property management world?
Each relationship is different. Everything you just said happens. So what I've noticed in property management is that the property management company is representing the property and has the authority as outlined in the operating agreement. Right. Now, many owners may prefer the property managers to handle, for efficiency and expertise because they're just not there, especially if the manager, has established relationships with third parties and they have expertise in that. But then there's a significant portion of owners that if it's significantly financially impactful, then they may want to make the final decision. And in cases like this, as the property manager typically gathers all the bids and presents them. And then at the recommendation, the owner gives a final approval. Now, if you're talking about mom and dad, right? Yeah. And grandma, it's kind of it's whoever has the resources and the bandwidth, right, to make the decision, and then also how did the vendor make them feel?
The gut feel aspect.
The gut feel aspect, along with the warranty and the expertise and the quality assurance and the safety record and financial stability and insurance. But for property management, property management represents the owners, make a good decision, have the backup for it. Or if it's a little bigger, then owners may, pick the bid and keep it moving.
But at least you have documentation, right? Like whatever happens, they can't go back and said like, you screwed me over. Like, no, this is the process we followed. These are all the bids. This is all the, all the things that they said they would and would not do. And this is why we awarded the bid here. So I feel like in property management, documentation is always your friend, and having a clear documentation of the entire bidding process is to the advantage of the property manager.
Yeah. And what I find is over the past few years is that documentation is all over the place. It's in somebody's emails. It's through a text message. It's on a voicemail. And there's no real solid database where all parties can go, have a deck, and be able to make financially relevant decisions. And that's something that, we built in for our
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah, I think this is a good segue. Can you talk a bit more about you notice all these problems in the bidding process and you built something to try to address these problems. Do you mind just giving a brief overview of what it is you built for Proposabid? Proposabid.
Yeah, thank you. So high level, basically what we do is that, we get with the property, do an intake. That intake creates an RFP. The request for proposal is then marketed out to our vendors. We get those bids back. We aggregate them apples for apples. We submit them over to the properties, and then the property makes a decision. And we're doing that in under 15 business days or less. And that's from, $50,000 bids to $3.5 million bids that are needed. Office remodels, roofing, concrete, whatever needs to be done. And for mom and pop, I believe that for you, we got the RFP back. I think we marketed it 72 hours later. And within 4 hours, we had 4 bids.
Yeah, that was impressive. It took us a month to get like 3 roofers in our house, and we were doing it ourselves. So to take this back to like property management,
Sure.
what future trends do you see cropping up in the vendor bidding industry? It was as it relates to like real estate improvements, to property management, anything you feel like property managers should know about or keep an eye out for?
So future trends, which is also lessons from the field, I think. So one of the things that kind of starting to happen is cash for bids, which is going to be devastating for property management companies. Basically, there's increasing costs in labor, materials, and operational overhead, and vendors are requiring cash deposits and payments up front to secure the bids. And those bids can be anywhere between, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. And that's just to get the bids. That's not even for the properties to make a decision on if they want to move forward with the vendor. And some of these things have to do with, reduced risk of non-payment. In that non-payment, it is highly recommended, future trend, to pay your vendors on time, right?
To keep you track.
Yes. Have your staff pay your vendors on time. Prompt payments maintains good vendor relationships and actually alleviates some of that crunch time. Another trend that I'm kind of seeing is, and back to cash for bids. It's probably not going to be a gold standard. Some vendors may adopt that, but overall, because of the client pushback, probably not. While some of the standards might be just do standard billings and terms like that, but smaller clients might want the cash for bids because they're just smaller. Some other future trends I do see is significant costs on project budgets. So when projects are delayed or bids are incomplete, the impact of rising costs can significantly affect the budget. And this is even more so than it was 5 years ago. So for commercial buildings, the annual cost increase is 5 to 8% per year across the United States on labor expenses, right? And ongoing material supply chain challenges. And then for multifamily, that rate of increase is anywhere between 6 to 10% annually. And then I'm in California, but we work in all 50 plus states. Inflation pressure is just outrageous, especially in the Bay Area. So for instance, a project that costs $90,000 4 years ago with a 3, 5, and 10% annual increase would be $95,000, $103,000, and $124,000 now. So future trend is get your properties in order. Make sure you get your bids. And one of the things I really recommend is that when you're sourcing your bids, to be honest with the vendor. And that's what we do. If you're just shopping for bids, we let that be known to the vendor. Look, this client is budget season. They they have to get some numbers. So you'll probably just get the quotes, not the complete breakdown, versus properties going out fishing, and then therefore the reputation is damaged. We could, you want mitigations around that to where you're sourcing those quotes for bids, and they might just give you bids because that's what we experience.
Yeah, that's an interesting distinction. I think it didn't occur to me until you were saying it right now. You're absolutely right. Because I know that's depending on the relationship with the owner, right? A property manager may need to just give the owner a quote, like, "Hey, there's this non-urgent property, work that we need to do, and it's going to cost from this much to this much," right? A quote would be helpful so it's closer to reality because you don't want to assume it costs the same the last time you did it 4 years ago, but you also don't need that detailed formal bid that requires a vendor coming to the property to actually give a detailed bid. And like you were saying, right, like if you're honest to the vendors, then you're not going to ruin your reputation because, like, hey, listen, my hands are tied. I'm not the one spending the money, but the owner, maybe the insurance provider, needs a quote. This can be a ballpark, right? Which is like they don't waste their time going into the details of a bid, and like you get what you need faster too.
Yeah, and so that's something that we work with on properties. And what we found is that vendors are more will provide full bids as long as you're honest about it. And so we are that liaison for that intermediary. Like, Marie has this project. She needs to know how much it's going to cost. Can you give a quote, or do you mind, doing the full bid? Because each estimator costs about $100 an hour. And by having that conversation on the client's behalf, they're willing to give full bids with the idea that, yes, we may not win this award, but we were told up front. And that creates, and so then the client can go back on their own and say, yeah, Tom's Roofing, Dave's Asphalt received this quote seven months ago, received this bid 7 months ago through Proposabid or a third party. Are you willing to honor that? Oh yeah, okay, yeah, Proposabid, yeah, or we knew what the deal was from the jump. So that actually lowers costs for the client.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's great. And so, if any one of our listeners are, interested in learning more about the bidding process, stuff to look out for, they have questions about the stuff that you covered today, or just want to contact you for help, how may they reach you?
Yes, ma'am. It's Proposabid, PROPOSABID.com. You can reach me at RoDevia, RoDevia at Proposabid.com. And phone number is 408-353-2769. Give me a call. I usually pick up on the second ring. And
I can attest to that.
Yes.
Even weekends and evenings.
Yeah, I enjoy picking up the line because I know when my phone rings, somebody needs assistance and they look to me to solve that problem. And I'm all about problem solving and getting things done. So,
yes, definitely. If there's anything that you need related to the bidding process, even just questions, reach out because RoDevia is the person to reach out to. Thank you so much for all the insights you offered with us today on the podcast. I appreciate you.
Oh, Marie, it's been a pleasure. I had an amazing time. Let me tell you, I learned so much just by interacting with you and getting into the mind of just an individual that doesn't have the time or the resources, right? And it's a done for you platform for the most part. You just do a little bit of input, you get a lot of output, and we've actually changed some business processes behind the experience we've had with you specifically. So, thank you so much for everything. And to the audience,
Oh, sorry. I
No,
think I cut you off.
it's okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And I hope to see you again on the podcast soon.
Yes, ma'am. I thank you. Take care.
And that's all we have for this episode of the Property Management Show, brought to you by 4.5 Marketing Agency. Since 2012, 4.5 has been focused on helping you, property managers, get more owner leads through marketing. Whether you need help with your website, SEO, online reputation, content, may that be video or written content, paid advertising, you name it, we can help you. Go to our website, 4andhalf.com, to learn more. That's FOURANDHALF.com. Now, as usual, feel free to send us your feedback and thoughts by emailing marketing@4andhalf.com. And if you are enjoying our show, feel free to leave us a review or rating on your favorite podcast app. Thank you so much, and see you next time.